Welcome to Paradigm Playbook, the podcast on the business of sports. With 50 plus years of experience, Steve Cook shares insights weekly, featuring top playmakers shaping the industry. Get ready to script your next play. Now, here's your host.
Hello and welcome to Paradigm Playbook. I'm the host, Steve Cook, alongside another Cook, my brother, Bruce Cook. Today, we're excited. I'm preparing for a presentation at U.S. Swim Schools. By the time you see this, I will have either succeeded or failed in that presentation. So the topic is, it started as sponsorships, it evolved into partnerships, and then labeled it as a unused marketing tool or unrecognized revenue stream. So I want to dig into all the values. But let's first, Bruce has been on the podcast before, so many of you know him. But just in case you don't, Bruce, how about a 1-minute introduction of yourself?
Yeah, I'm an old guy, not nearly as old as you, but I've been around the sports world for 30 plus years in professional tennis and the Olympic world. I live in Scotland now. I came over to the UK 25 years ago. I've worked for the NFL Europe League. I've run a basketball team. I've run a sponsorship program for a major bank. And I've also worked in sports marketing research for a number of years. And now I run a company called Sponsor Lab, which is an online platform for analyzing the performance of sponsorship strategies. So that's where we are today. And hopefully some of that experience is relevant to whatever you're going to throw at me today.
And before the chat starts blowing up, explain all the beakers and stuff behind you.
Sponsor Lab, and where the name of that company comes from is from an article I wrote a number of years ago about how too often sponsorships, when they're being evaluated and reported on, it feels like you're going into a courtroom and all you're putting forward is a case for the defense. You're just putting forward the good news. You're not looking at all the truthful data to make good strategic decisions, and all you're trying to get is an innocent verdict. The way it should feel is more like a science lab where you gather all of the data that's relevant and you make honest assessments and you work together with your lab partners to make good strategic decisions. So strategy should feel more like a science lab than it does a courtroom.
And then, Bruce, just as a point of clarification, so the world that you've existed in for the last, say, 25 years has been, or maybe longer than that, is high-level sports. So you mentioned professional tennis, and it's very high level, and sponsorships at that level are much higher in dollar volume, but I believe no less important than they are for the small entrepreneur. So I'm a little bit on the other side of this than Bruce is. I own a small family entertainment center that for the first at least 10 years depended entirely on partnerships for our marketing budget. In other words, we spent zero money on actual paid advertising and paid marketing. I went out and developed partnerships, and I think by the time I got to year 5, I was at 22 partnerships, and some of them brought in money, many of them brought in audience. But I want to start here by saying, okay, why would we do this? If we're a small entrepreneur in the sports business, why are we looking for partnerships or sponsorships? And we've agreed that we're not going to get into the semantics of what's the right word to use. We'll use several different words here. I think we agree on the purpose of working with other people to make your business better.
Yeah, you started to ask me about the world I've lived in for the past 25 years. I thought I was going to answer you with questions with facts and figures about Scotland, but no, yeah, you're right. Most of my work has been in bigger sports. So when I talk about sponsorship for an ATP Tour tennis event or for the Olympic Committee or for an NFL team, it's bigger, but the principles are the same. Sponsors or partners get involved with something. It's a marketing relationship. So yes, they're paying money, but they do want something in return. And I think the point being that in order to have the best possible relationship, which means you give it a chance to grow, you've got to be conscious of the fact that your sponsor or partner is looking to improve their business through their relationship with you. Your question of why would we do this? Well, there's two primary reasons come to mind. One is it's another source of revenue, and that helps you enhance your business. But the other thing is a lot of times the partners bring more to the relationship than just money. They don't just write you a check. They can help you promote your business as well.
I'll rattle off a little list that I put together. So one is to help you reach an expanded audience. audience. So that is a good reason. Boosting your brand visibility by partnering with someone maybe that's bigger than you. Enhancing your credibility by locking up with someone who is already well known and respected in the business. Creating a revenue stream, you mentioned. Facilitating cost-effective marketing. I'll tell the story of my billboard story a little bit later on, but that's cost-effective marketing. And then just enhancing your community relations. There's things that I've done in the past with partners that I couldn't have done on my own, running a local event. And I think there's a lot of people that try to do small events and they try to do them by themselves instead of partnering or bringing a sponsor into that.
The VIKL element is, especially if it's budget reducing, instead of just getting cash from somebody, if you're getting free use of a facility, or if they're providing you however many cases of water or something every week, or whatever they're bringing to your events, or they're going to print the t-shirts for you for something, anytime, because you've got all these underlying costs, and if you can get the cost of that down or eliminated, that's just as good as cash coming through the door. I mean, Steve, you've run so many baseball camps and gymnastics events and all kinds of things that where you've had all that, and every one of those line items is something that you then look to reduce the cost of through a partnership. But you also mentioned something about associating with quality brands. If you bring in partners that are promoting their association with you and they're a well-known and respected business, that immediately elevates the credibility of your facility, of your business, because people will just subconsciously realize that, oh, they're getting sponsored by this brand or this company, so they must be legit. And especially for those that have never walked through the doors of your facility before, that's a big help.
So one of the things that we've talked about before, when we go into a sponsorship, we're looking for a sponsor for our business, which we're going to turn into a partner. But we go into it saying, okay, here's what I want out of it. If I can get $1,000 from each sponsor and I get 10 sponsors, I got 10,000. That pays for a lot of my marketing and all that. So you're thinking about it as one, what you can bring in and how you will go forward with it. But what's another way that you could look at that same $1,000 sponsorship that may be more partner oriented?
A couple of things come to mind there, and I'm not sure if I'm answering your question here, and you might have to prompt me again. But very often, especially smaller facilities or events, they will go into a partner, a sponsorship mindset, thinking, I need to bring in some money. And the story they will tell when they're going to people is, this is what we're hoping to do, and it costs X amount, so therefore we need your help to do that. And that's almost like fundraising more than it is sponsorship or partnership. I tend to make the distinction between patrons and partners. The patrons are the ones that like what you're doing and they're just going to give you money, whether that's an individual, a parent of somebody that comes into your facility, or an adult, somebody that's a member of one of your leagues or your clubs or whatever, and they just really like what you're doing and they want to help you along. That's fine. That's good to have those. Those are great to have. Sometimes they lead to partnerships, but that's what I would call more of a patron relationship, where they're just giving you money to help you out. In a sponsorship, you've got to be going to them with a story that is not just about, this is why we need your help, but this is how we can help you as well. And you've always got to understand the business or the company or the person that you're talking to. What are the buttons you can push and what are the solutions you can deliver? What do you know about your audience, your customer base, that lines up with them? You know, it might be that you've got really good social media presence out of your facility, out of your club or whatever it may be, and they're all over Instagram and TikTok or whatever. And if you can incorporate a local business into that, you can really do them some favor, give them some essentially free advertising, but that's a value to them. Whatever it is, if you can go into that ask when you're asking for money with something of value to them, that's great. And it's important that you don't just say, we can give you this much, we can put your logo here and here. It's about understanding what they're trying to achieve as a business. Who are the people that they're would like trying to reach but can't reach? If you can help them do that, then you're bringing value.
I do a 2-minute drill on Instagram where I do book reviews. And one of the series of books that I really got into recently is the Go Giver series. And it's a go giver leader, and it's a person who puts in the forefront of a relationship what they're putting into it, what they are bringing to it, what they're doing for the other person. And the general feeling is if you go in with that go-giver attitude, not only will you get something back, the chances are what you will get back will be greater than what you were going to originally ask for.
You'll be able to tell me who, because there are books going back to the 50s and 60s, and whether it's Napoleon Hill or Zig Ziglar or whoever, is talking about relationships, and sales always goes back to relationships, how to make friends and influence people. I'm not sure who that one was, win friends and influence people, but it's about taking a genuine interest in the other party. And the same principle applies in sponsorship. If you're going in to try and win sponsorship to get them to contribute to you, you're trying to build a relationship, and you can't build a relationship unless you take a genuine interest in the other party. And that's the beginning of any successful sponsorship conversation as well.
A great point is the goal has to be the relationship, not the transaction. The transaction is important. You need money to do things. And I'll be the first one to tell entrepreneurs that all say, well, I'm not in it for the money. Well, yes, you are. If you're not, you should be, because the more money you bring in, the more service you can provide for what you and I believe are the most valuable things in life. So developing children and children's sports and children's activities is important. So the more money we can get to do that, the better off we are. We had an orthodontist locally and very good marketing. And everybody knew Dr. Burke. I guess I shouldn't use his name, but he was a sponsor. Anyway, he used to give out wooden nickels that if you had a good checkup, a wooden nickel. And I guess the thing was, I don't know, it was Ben Franklin or whoever, to test it, you bite and you see if it's real gold or whatever. So we have a batting cage that works on tokens. And we just went to him and say, what if you replaced your wooden nickel with a batting cage token? Now that's got at the time, a $2 value. Doesn't change what he does, but it adds value to what he's given away. And what it did for me, now we use a different color token just so I could track it. And we can dig into that, Bruce, because I know that's a big point of concern for you. So what we were getting is that expanded audience. We were getting to the bottom line is we're in the business of children, and so is he. And I think that's the essence of the beginning of the conversation about a sponsorship or a partnership.
I think that's a really clever activation, and a very simple one too, because the other thing is every time he hands a kid one of those tokens, they're going to say, at least for the first time, they say, what's this? And he instantly is going to promote your facility. That's a token for free 20 balls in the batting cage or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And where is it? Okay, this is where it is. You go down, it's right down around the corner or whatever. And before you know it, you've got a spokesperson there. He probably didn't realize it when he agreed to hand out your tokens, but it would work. And I think with those kind of things work so well, especially at this level of sponsorship we're talking about. It's not going to be about television exposure and all that. It's how can we work together to do something that's good for both of us. I think that's critically important.
I want to get into it a little bit because I know this is a big part of Sponsor Lab. So one is it's the conversation that takes place before activation. So I think we have that problem is, okay, I got my $1,000 for that banner. As long as I get the banner up, I'm good. I forget about it. But if you're not in a communication with that sponsor, telling him what's happening, Saturdays, we have 1,000 families come through our facility, your banner's up there. And maybe there's something that you can add to it. You can add, your banner's up anyway. Why don't you come here and set up a table and hand out information about your business? It doesn't cost you anything more, but it gives him access. So you're expanding his audience, not just your own.
The property or the rights holder, they're the one that's selling the rights to be associated with them. And in any sponsorship relationship, a good rights holder wants their sponsor to be happy. I mean, that's a given, because if they're happy, you've got a better chance of them coming back next year or maybe increasing their spend with you or whatever. So if it's a given that you want them to be happy, you would be foolish not to find out what's going to make them happy. And that's what happened. Whether you're doing it in a very structured way like we do with Sponsor Lab, it's setting clear objectives and weightings and KPIs and all that kind of stuff, or at a much smaller level where somebody's given you $1,000 to put a banner up, it's wise and important to ask that question, however you need to ask it. Okay, at the end of this year, you've agreed to pay me $1,000 or $500 or whatever to put up a banner for 1 year in my facility. What's going to make you happy at the end of the year? Is it just knowing that it's there, or are you going to want to know the number of people that came through our facility, or is there something else that we can do? So if it's working for you, do we have to link some kind of a promotion to this? Should we probably be putting a unique QR code or something on that banner so you can tell if, what it's delivering for you? But to have that conversation early on in the relationship about what does success look like for them in this relationship is what's critically important. And if the bigger the deal is, the bigger the sponsorship is, the more you need to put a really structured system in place. But even at this kind of basic entry level, you need to have some kind of understanding as to what the hopes and expectations of your partner are.
And I think that makes it dependent on ongoing communication. A lot of people in the corporate world, and I spent some time there as well, will focus on closing deals. How many sponsorship deals can you close? But if you think that every one you close requires even a weekly call. And I mentioned that at one point I had 22 partners for Grand Slam for a little business. And one was the local Little League. In fact, 3 were local Little Leagues, but they all work. And even if it is a banner and that person says, listen, I believe in what you're doing, I just want my banner up there. It's up to you then to take it one step further. I'm trying to remember, my good friend Dave was the Allstate guy, and he was a sponsor, and we put a banner up with his picture. But we went one step further, and once a month it was you're in good hands at Grand Slam. And we kind of did a kind of a co-branding thing. Not sure I ever had the rights to do that, or I could do it, but the local agent that had to pony up the $500 or whatever it was for a banner at least said, okay, well, they're talking about me. And the clients certain people have slogans that are so well known, you just have to say it and they know what you're talking about. We've had everyone from here in Eastern Pennsylvania, the convenience store of choice is a Wawa. It's a gas station convenience store.
I hear they do coffee too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's like coffee all the time. But if I get Wawa, sometimes I'm running a coach's clinic and I have Wawa sponsor it, and the only payment is they're giving me 2 boxes of coffee. But if I just give away free coffee, then I'm not doing my share of this. I have to make a point that it's Wawa coffee. And so I'm promoting more than just taking.
A couple things that are coming to mind here. And one of the reasons that when we talk to major rights holders, so these are Formula One teams, major soccer clubs. I was talking to a NASCAR team yesterday, and one of the real values of using a tool like Sponsor Lab for managing their partnerships is that just by having something that forces you to ask that question of what does success look like? What are you hoping to get out of it? You're showing an interest in them, and you're sending a message to them that says, we care about your success, not just our own side of this transaction. We actually have an interest in it. So just by asking that question, even if they say, I don't know, it doesn't matter, the fact that you're asking is sending them that positive signal. And I think the other one is so there are things that you can do with phones and everything and social media and everything that you do now. If you've got 22 partners, whatever, and they all have banners around your facility, when you're putting out your newsletter or your promotional material, whatever, make sure some of those are in the background of the photos that you're using. Get them some added coverage for that. Even if you're creating that for an audience of one, it's the one person, you just want to make sure that they see that. But then with relationships as well, some of them you'll say, you know what, once come in on your way to work and let's have a cup of coffee and we'll walk around and chat. And hey, if you've got any ideas for things that we can do better here, I'd love to hear them. You're a valued part of this business, and you're just building that relationship, because everybody knows it's harder to walk away from a friend than it is an advertising agreement where you've just gone online and bought a logo somewhere. When there's a human relationship involved, it solidifies that relationship, and that's when you're talking about a partnership and not just an advertising relationship.
If you start on partners, if you start just with the people that are already involved with you either do business. So it could be a vendor or a service provider, or we go to one plumber for every plumbing need in our place. And the name of it is My Favorite Plumber. And so we just changed it. It's Grand Slam's Favorite Plumber. And
right.
Every once in a while when I'm running a thing, they kick in $50. So that's an undefined partnership. I do get money out of it. I do get savings. So I think anything like that will work. I always call them sponsorships.
I'm just going to interrupt for a second there. And that's something that there's a big trend at the highest level of this industry right now to say it's no longer sponsorship, it's partnership. And I agree that you have to treat it like a partnership, but I don't think that means that sponsorship is wrong as a term. It's still a sponsorship, but you need to treat those that you're working with as partners because you're both in it together. And that's the clarification, but I don't have any problem with still calling it a sponsorship.
So our sponsorship with a bank that I had just borrowed a couple $1 million from, and I noticed that he had a display in his lobby that focused on some of the businesses that they had financed. I went to it right away and I said, can I be featured? And I got a month. The next November, that I was the feature business in there, and they talked about us. When I advertised with the local newspapers that are given out in the elementary schools, I went to them and I said, you know what, we're doing something really neat. Could you write an article about this? They're looking for information. They're looking for content. And so they're very willing to do that. And in exchange, you know what? If you've got complimentary copies of your publication, I'm happy to give it out with subscription cards and help you promote your product. And again, I bought a business. To own this business, I spent every dime I had, and a lot of dimes I didn't have. So that was the whole start of this thing. So I had no money for advertising. So I was doing t-shirts for a camp, and they came back and they said, it's going to be $6 for a t-shirt or whatever it was. And I said, I can't afford that. So what we came up with is I got the shirts for $4, but the campers had to pick them up at the person's store prior to coming to camp. So I actually drove people into the store to pick up a free shirt. Now, I don't know that got them any more business. At least made that partner feel like I was thinking about their end of it, not just mine.
Exactly. And maybe they'll never know if that led to business, but like your batting cage token example, you've created a situation where now there's a deeper understanding of that t-shirt company's business amongst all of your campers because they went there. And they'll probably remember that for quite a long time. And at some point, somebody will say to one of them, we need to get some t-shirts printed for something. Where can we go to get this? And somebody will have said, I know there's a place on whatever street. So you just never know. But it's all, like you say, it sends a signal that you actually care about delivering value to them and helping their business. And that's what sponsorship is. It's a lot of partnerships are just two people helping each other out and there's no financial transaction. I think it becomes a sponsorship when one side is giving something of clear monetary value, whether that's writing a check or providing something for free or at a noticeably discounted rate. To me, that's when it becomes sponsorship, and they should all feel like partnerships.
So one of the challenges is that difficult for me because I was never going to someone saying, you know what, I need $500,000. Actually, in the corporate world, I did do that. But I also was on the other side of it where I invested $250,000 to sponsor a national organization. I've been on both sides of that. But in my business, I never came up short on ideas. One of the ideas that people will steer away from, what I didn't, is partnering with my competitors. And if you can find a specific difference, and I'll go specifically to the difference in, there's several, but right now there's two dominant baseball facilities in Chester County and where I am. We specialize in young kids, getting kids to the big fields. We focus on 4 to 12 and instruction. The other one puts kids on teams, does travel teams, takes them there. They like coaching kids. They talk about getting your kid into college and what college can he play in. We don't work at that high level. So I just went to them and I said, you know what? I'll trade you every one of my great kids for every one of your 4-year-olds. To me, that was a good trade. That's what I want. I want that because at 4-year-old, so I'm calculating customer lifetime value. I'm calculating what we can do, but you can partner with competitors.
Yeah, and I would call that's a partnership. That's a strategic partnership. I don't know that it's sponsorship by my mindset or definition.
But if you go and look at, I call them the odd couples, the Apple and Microsoft, they're two companies that fought, banging heads forever. And and then really both thrived when they started working together. And there's a ton of those that you can go to. There's a partnership between BMW and Louis Vuitton, which is interesting to me.
Yeah, those kind of partnerships are becoming more and more prevalent. They're co-branded, they're almost licensing deals where you're taking two brands that are in different business sectors and they're coming together. It's Lego and Formula One or whatever. They're coming together and they found a way, said, you know what, let's make actual replica Lego versions of these Formula One cars. So that's a brand partnership there. I think when in your comment about partnering with your competitors, I tried to do that once in my world when I was working for the Royal Bank of Scotland, and we were getting approached by the 2014 Commonwealth Games that were coming to Glasgow. And it was in the midst, we were still they were probably approaching us in, I don't know, 2011 or something, and we were still dealing with the financial crisis that hit towards the end of 2008. And they came to us and they said the financial services category is traditionally worth $5 to $8 million or pounds at the time. And they went around and asked every different bank for a similar amount of money. And in the end, they got nothing from the banking category. The proposition that I made was, why don't we get 5 banks together? Because our brand perception is terrible right now. The whole industry of banking is bad. Why don't we get British banking as a whole to each chip in a little bit of money and support this and then promote the games in all of our branch windows and do all this? Nobody bought it. It didn't fly at the time, but I still tell that story, and I think it would have been a good idea because in the end, we did nothing in relation to those games and the games didn't get a banking partner. But sometimes I think it would make sense to work. It depends what you call a competitor, because what your example, there was an overlap. Definitely, you're both baseball facilities, but you were doing slightly different things for different.
I think the outside world looked at it as competitors. I never thought of it as competitors. I'll give you one last story that I wanted to get in, and this is my billboard story. And again, going back to when I had zero money, there's a giant billboard on Route 30, which is the main line going up. And I said, it'd be really cool if we had that billboard. And it cost $5,000 a month to be on that billboard. And I just thought, I came up with this idea for the children of Great Valley. And I went to 4 different sports businesses in the area, dance studio, a gymnastic club. I forget what the others were. This is 20 years ago I did this. And I said, listen, you can be on that board and you only have to pay 25% of what it is. And I got 4 businesses to each put up 25%. And I, of course, put up 5 businesses. So I appeared on the billboard for free. Now, granted, I did the legwork. I came up with the idea and everybody knew what I was doing and nobody cared. Somebody has to have the creativity and somebody has to do the work, and people don't mind if you do that. However big the sponsorship, and I put a caveat in here, Bruce, because there's a lot of us in the small business that'll say, I'm small potatoes and I can't think in Bruce's world of millions and all this thing. You never know. And all of a sudden you're running one dance studio and then somebody else wants to partner with you and you have 2, and then you expand it, then you scale it, then you have 10. And now there's a shoe company that wants a sponsorship deal and you are talking big money. Yeah. So it happens. We have friends, Bruce and I, that ran a tiny little gymnastic camp in central Pennsylvania, and it grew and grew, and they added action sports and skateboarding and all that. All of a sudden, they're in the millions dealing with companies like Target and Vitamin Water and all these other things. So if you start with the idea of looking for, and I think, Bruce, you make a really good point, patrons are still good. So look for patrons. Who's going to support you just because they believe in what you're doing? And there's nothing wrong with that. Then there's sponsors and they're paying for results and you have to show them to it. And then there's partners which dig into, and some of those partnership deals that you develop, instead of, having a sponsorship window of 6 months, a year, a quarter, or whatever, it's an ongoing thing. And we're going to partner with that. And when someone comes to buy your business, don't be surprised if it's not one of your partners.
Yeah, absolutely. It all comes down to 2 things, I think. We've talked about relationships, and I think a patron program is a great way to start relationships. You should reward those patrons, not only just listing them on your website and a banner on the wall somewhere, but do something for them. Have a patron night at your facility where you bring them all in and you show them all the progress you're making. But I think the other thing before we go that I think is important, if you ultimately want to have a solid patron program, sponsorship program with partners is to get your story straight. What is your story? And that is, why are you in business? What are you trying to do? Why is it important that you deliver these programs for kids? To really get that story succinct and clear, and think about, if you do get the money in from these additional revenue sources, hopefully it's not just to pay yourself a salary, but it's, what do you want to do with it? What are your ambitions and your goals that you hope to achieve in your facility if you can get that additional revenue in from those patrons and sponsors? Because being able to tell that story is really important. If people are in there and you're just talking to parents, and you can say, you know what, we can't wait till we raise the funds to add in this new equipment or this new extension that we want to put on the facility, or we want to open up another program, but we just need to get a little bit more sponsorship in before we can do that. And you tell that story enough times and it has a really good purpose to it, you're right, people will start saying, hey, let's have a meeting sometime. Let me come by for a cup of coffee because I might be able to help. I think it starts with those kind of stories.
So I totally agree. And telling your story is greatly important in your ability, but your willingness to tell it. And it has to be there. And just like in sales, we say you need an elevator pitch. You need to answer the question, so what do you do? And that's right. So that's being said all the time. If your employees aren't tired of hearing why you do what you do, you're not saying it enough. I have a story that everybody's heard, my Ernie story, with what I do in baseball. And it's like my employees roll their eyes, but they smile when they do. So it's okay with me. I think that's absolutely right, Bruce. You have to be willing to share your story. And then your patrons and partners and sponsors also want to be part of sharing that story. So let them in. I think that's great. Yeah. Obviously, we could do this forever, or at least for another hour, but we're not going to. Try to respect the time of the audience. I appreciate everybody being with us. A couple things coming up in the future. One, if you want to learn more about Sponsor Lab, and there's also a secondary sister company called Strategy Lab, which helps you in the same calculations of any business strategy or personal strategy. I'm personally using it to strategize my personal being, mind, body, spirit, that whole thing. So there's a lot there. And we're also hosting a event in December in Orlando for entrepreneurs in the business of sports, where we're going to teach all these things, and it's going to be really exciting, a good time. That you can get to by going to Third Level Consulting/events, and you can sign up right there. And to get the Sponsor Lab, Bruce, quick, what's the
best way is actually to go to strategylab.biz, and from there you can go to either Strategy Lab or Sponsor Lab, into either of those websites. But that's the best place to start, Strategy Lab Biz.
Am I right, or talking out of turn if I say, if somebody wants to try it, is there a free version that they could?
Yeah, there's a free limited functionality version, but also for a bigger organization, I can do a short-term free trial as well.
Yeah, anyway, so if somebody wants to learn more about it, and what it does is it basically saves you time. And that's the thing. It gets you better results, saves you time. And at the end of your sponsorship, when someone says, so how'd it go? You can tell them exactly. It was 83% spot on.
Yeah. I mean, it's the question that always gets asked is this thing working? The CFOs and the financial heads are all saying, before I approve this for next year, is this thing working? Well, this gives you a really clear way to answer that question.
And I think that's true in big business where you live, and in small business where I live. I think it's still important. Even if they're only giving you $500, that $500 is important. They worked for that, and they're investing it in you. So you have to be able to show them results.
From everything that your listeners and the facilities that you work with are trying to do, they should always be able to answer the question, is the plan working? Because you say, okay, we're going to build this facility, we're going to grow this facility, and we're going to set out a plan for that. At all times, you should be able to answer the question, is the plan working? So you need to put in a performance framework to help you answer that.
That's awesome. And you know what? We'll get back on another episode and talk that kind of performance framework. That could be another episode. So we'll talk about that. Bruce, thank you very much. I appreciate you jumping in. And
I gotta get back to my Bunsen burner here.
Talk to you all soon. Make it a great day.
Thanks for tuning in to Paradigm Playbook. Explore more at ParadigmPlaybook.com. Want to be a playmaker? Contact StephenJCook.com. Share this episode to spread the word about sports industry opportunities. See you next week.